What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into the West Virginia postgame show here at the Voice of College Football channel with your host here from the Country Roads webcast. As always, I'm Jordan and got another co-host of mine from the Country Roads webcast here, Bradley. What's going on, Brad?
Not much, man. Enjoying my Saturday post Thanksgiving.
Absolutely, always better after a West Virginia win for sure here. As you see the Mountaineers pull off the victory 24-19 in the final game of the West Virginia football season in 2022 to bring West Virginia 5-7 overall, 3-6 to finish out 2022. First Big 12 road victory from Kansas last season, first of the season. At least West Virginia gets one in 2022. And here we are popping in. We got another great personality, here from the West Virginia channel, college football, and across YouTube here. Coos from Coos's Corner. What's going on, Coos? We were just talking about the Mountaineers pulling off the victory and kind of our opening thoughts. What are you thinking here coming off of a road win here to finish out Big 12 play?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. Big win, man. I mean, I know, people can say they didn't mean anything, but it always means something, man, especially when you beat a team that we haven't beaten in, 7 years. And who would have thought? I saw somebody put this on Twitter. If you'd have told me we'd beat Baylor, Virginia Tech, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State all in the same season and still not make a bowl game, I'd have told you were on crack. But apparently that's what's going to happen.
It's wild.
Absolutely on crack.
Do you guys think this will have any impact on?
I put that up on our Twitter. I was like, it's a weird season just because 2022 you're going to finish, like you said, 5-7 without a win and beat them in Oklahoma for the first time in the same season, and like you said, Baylor as well. So I don't know, it's weird for sure. I don't know. I don't know what this does moving forward, program wise, though. That's, I guess, the big question now, the elephant in the room you got to talk about.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Does this win do anything to change the future of Neil Brown? Who knows? I guess we will find out soon enough.
I mean, I personally don't think it does. I don't think it does anything to change the future of Neil Brown. But I truly think that the future of Neil Brown is being here again for another year. And I really think that comes down to, I think that we've kind of dropped the ball on getting things rolling. Maybe it's just not Neil Brown that sucks at making change. But maybe our administrators also struggle with that. So I think that we're a little behind the eight ball when it comes to hiring an AD, and with news coming out, Matt Rule being picked up by Nebraska and more rumblings of Hugh Freeze to Auburn, really just makes you think, there's not as much out there. You've already missed out on two of your top picks, so now you're already going down to, you gone from your S tier to your A tier, maybe. But, to me, I think that it just gives whoever the athletic director is that's coming in, gives them a chance, like, hey, Neil Brown, you got a year to show me what you got. Maybe not even that. You might have 4 games, and, you better come in, you better win them, or you're fired. So gives the athletic director a little bit more time to kind of get a fresh jump on it next season as opposed to this season. So, no, I don't think this game changed Neil Brown's future, but I think that Neil Brown's future is still another year at WVU.
I agree with that. That's what it's kind of be. It's kind of what it's leaning toward, I think. And I had somebody send me a tweet today that said that apparently that they're hearing that one of the AD candidates wants to keep Neil Brown. So, and they're apparently really high on the list of considerations. I don't know who that is, obviously, but probably Kelly Zinn would be my gut feeling.
Yeah, I mean that'd be right along the lines of that, her being so involved in it in the first place, and kind of being the heart and have her finger on the pulse of the program before she left. So yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yep.
Which I don't know how happy I'd be with that decision in that case either. If that is her that is making that decision or otherwise, I don't know if I'd be happy with her being the choice. But I don't know. You got to pick somebody, I guess. But we'll see what happens. I think we'll know in probably 24 to 48 hours. Wouldn't you say?
Probably so. And I'm not real happy. I wouldn't be crazy about it either. But I'm preparing myself, and I'm kind of already starting to look ahead as though Neil Brown's coming back, to be honest. And I'm going to try to look at the silver lining to that and what positives that could bring, because I think there are some positives to that. Even though that wasn't my first choice. there are some positives that come away from him staying another year, or at least another year, I should say.
Yeah, and I think some of those positives being the things that have been his positives so far as a coach. Getting good, really high quality recruits in here, and they haven't developed necessarily to our standard, but you still look at guys today like Jalen Anderson. Had an absolute monster of a game popped off, but you could probably contribute a lot of it to the offensive line really getting some push.
Mm-hmm.
But Jalen Anderson found holes, and he went up through them with some conviction, and that's what really got him those yards. And I feel like we haven't had a consistent running back that can kind of break those tackles. I feel like in the last 3 years I've seen a lot of running backs get tripped up by the last man, and today was the first day where you saw him really beat that man.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was exciting to see. So, Neil Brown comes back. Maybe you can convince Mumu bin Wahad to stay. You can convince, some of these other guys to stay, maybe buy in for that year. And I think I honestly think that would make a big difference. The class of 2022 and 21 have, been significant. So they've definitely been the positives so far under Neil Brown, those last two classes. And seeing them more can only do better, I would hope.
Yeah, I think Mumu's leaving because of Neil Brown, just to be honest with you.
Yep.
Based on what I've heard. He wasn't
Wait, say that again?
He wasn't happy with how I don't think he was happy with how he was being used. Or not used, for lack of a better, is the best way to say it.
Yeah. Or they didn't want to be part of, a coaching change staff where he's going to have to go back in and learn somebody else again and, X, Y, and Z.
Golden Blue Dude says he wants to pop in for a minute. I just sent the link to Joey GBD if you want to pop in for a minute. I just sent it to him, so hopefully he'll hop in with. Kenny says, "Hey, what's going on, Kenny? See what else
What's
we
up,
got
Kenny?
in the chat
What
here."
do you guys think about Nico's performance today?
Kenny says everyone smash the like button.
Absolutely.
Mixed bag, but I thought I saw some positive things for sure, though, especially that I know a couple throws he fitted in really tight windows, but a couple deep balls were there that he missed. But, I think that's more of a timing thing. Probably hasn't played a lot with those first string wide receivers, in my opinion.
Same. What about you,
Yeah.
Brad?
I mean, to me, I kind of saw it as a bit of a, he really only played the second half. But you're looking at two freshman quarterbacks for two programs, that are, Oklahoma State's probably better position than we are right now. And he stepped in there, and Nico managed the game well. He didn't lose, and it's real easy to walk in there and lose that game. You look at, I keep forgetting Oklahoma State's freshman quarterback's name because he was just in there. He really struggled that last possession. And I think that's a freshman. It looked like a freshman, it looked like a true freshman out there. And Nico didn't necessarily look like that. He didn't look crisp and clean, but he looked like he belonged out on that field.
Yeah, I agree. It didn't look like the moment was too big for him.
Absolutely not. And I think that they were kind of talking about that on one of the radio stations I was listening to when I was riding over here to my grandmother's. They were talking about, Nico's been preparing for that for his whole life. He's been, he's talking about him and his dad doing interviews with Coach Saban, and him and his dad would practice that interview, and he was, he's always preparing for that moment. He's always preparing the guy in that position. And so, I think when he stepped in there, he had full confidence in himself. I think the coaching staff did too.
Yeah. And I think the way it was raining, it's hard to judge a quarterback that hasn't played.
Absolutely.
Based on, because you can't throw the ball the way you want to throw the ball. You can't catch the ball the way you want to catch the ball. Everything is just almost thrown out the window, to be honest.
Yeah.
And the
his running looked good.
And they were calling a very conservative game too, which, didn't really allow him to do a whole lot anyway. So I really feel like this is a bad game to judge him on for all the reasons you mentioned, plus the weather.
Yeah. I mean, quite honestly, it might be a good game to judge him on if you want to go on the other side, though, and say, hey, that was an easy game to lose.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
Absolutely an easy game to lose, and he didn't.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. Yeah, it could have gone either way. Krista sent the interesting comment here. If Brown stays, should be forced to Leslie and Moore. I don't know about Matt Moore right now. I think the offensive line is, kind of improved. The run game's been pretty solid, but I think if you do keep Neil Brown, somebody's probably going to have to be the scapegoat there. I don't know who it's going to be ultimately, but.
Well, I would start, for me personally, I will start with the defensive secondary, maybe, because they've struggled most of the season. I will say this. Hats off to Malachi Ruffin, man. The guy made that stupid boneheaded play where he started celebrating too early. allowed that big play.
Awful.
And then at the end of the game, he comes back and makes two pass breakups that saved the game for West Virginia there at the end. They were trying to pick on him, thinking he was the weak link, and he both times he stepped up and made the stops. And I think, to me, he more than made up for that boneheaded play that he made earlier in the game. And this kid was a walk-on at one time, man. And you guys remember early in the season, he was getting burnt on, constantly.
He's been getting picked on all year.
Yeah.
People have targeted him all year because they see that PWO that used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've gone after him. And, like you said, he's been burnt a lot of times. But the last 3-4 games of this year, Malachi Ruffin has done a hell of a job getting out there. And, he does not look pretty by any means.
Mm-hmm.
But he runs with him and he puts his hand up and, he gets in the way. And sometimes he gets called for it. But a lot of times he doesn't. He's looked good. But I will say that boneheaded play was one of the wildest things I've ever seen in my life. I don't think I've ever seen that, where a guy starts celebrating an incomplete pass as the wide receiver is running an extra 20 yards down the field. But
yeah. But if Brown stays, I'd like to see him. I don't know how you don't. I'm sorry, Jordan. I didn't hear you talking, man. You're breaking up a little bit on my end, so I didn't hear you. The beginning of what you were saying.
No, you're fine. I was just saying that was definitely the first time I'd seen that as well with Ruffin. But you go ahead. I was just commenting on what Brad added right there. I wasn't really saying anything fully.
Okay. But yeah, I was just gonna say if somebody has to be the scapegoat, and I think you have to start with Jordan Leslie. And if that's the case, whoever the new defensive coordinator is probably going to have guys they want to bring in anyway. So I think you let the defensive coordinator make that decision. Obviously the head coach has final say, but the defensive coordinator needs to needs to play a role in what guys he wants on his defensive staff, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And though I think that Alan Jackson has done a great job with the defensive line, and he's done great recruiting, so I wouldn't mind to see him stay. But I definitely think that Jordan Leslie's probably, unfortunately, the first head to roll. But, he's had 1 or 2 good years, but has really struggled since. So, you saw the improvement in the offense this year when, Neil Brown was willing to make that change. And if he's willing to make the same change on defense, you keep some of the same pieces, you coach them up well, then, you got a chance to really shut some people up next year.
Yeah.
That's true. There's definitely potential. I think that's what Neil Brown was trying to do today, in my opinion. It looked like, whether it be, playing Nico, I know putting him in the third series at the timing they did was questionable, but, if you paid attention, even in the past when we had Jarrett Dagey, that's what they would do with Garrett Green, is it would be like the third series of the game, no matter what. That's when they was putting him in. And so it just so happened to be this game that it was after, the Garrett Green touchdown run. But I think he wanted to play, Nico Marchiol more. He wanted to play Jalen Anderson more, and even Jacoby Spells. We saw, some of those players play more than we had seen in the past, because I think for him, he's trying to showcase, just give me one more year. I got all these young players. And I think even, whether it be, depending on the weather a little bit as well, but I think they even changed up the offense a little bit. The announcers were calling it even a run rate, and we saw more read option because Nico Marchiol and Garrett Green can both do those type of things. So maybe he's trying to say, here's a preview of what it could be if you do give me one more year. And I think that's why he played some of the younger guys more, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that gives me more frustration because, as the people that have been preaching about seeing younger guys play, you could have made this change third game in the year, and maybe you don't win any more games than what you've won so far or what you ended up winning this year. But you probably appease the fans a little bit more, quite honestly. I couldn't tell you how many times I just got frustrated seeing a senior get beat, absolutely burned by every wide receiver in the Big 12 when we've got all this great young talent that you've done an excellent job recruiting. They're your guys that you've recruited through and through. And just not seeing you trust them and not being willing to change is just frustrating. But waiting till the end of the year to be like, well, look at all these great young guys we have on the team that I haven't played all year that I've just reluctant to give snaps to and let them grow. And it's just, that's the one thing I think that it's been one of the massive downfalls to Neil Brown is just the reluctancy to make that change.
I agree, Alan. But guys, I'm gonna have to be honest, and I know this might piss off some of our fans, but I'm tired of talking about the Pitt game. It was 3 months ago.
Me and you both.
We need to move on from it. It was one play call. One play call does not make a season.
Yeah, and that's the thing, man.
Absolutely.
It's a big what if, and I agree it did change the season. Starting off 0-2 probably did change the whole trajectory of the season. And if you beat, a top 15 at the time Pitt team there, who knows what it does for your team's confidence. But you can play the game on that, the other way as well throughout the season. West Virginia could be, 2-9 or 2-10 or whatever, because look at Baylor. They played a backup quarterback. Here they had to play a backup quarterback. They got some bounces their way against Oklahoma as well. So, I mean, you can do that either way, I think. Yeah, West Virginia could be 7-5, but they could just easily be 2-10. So I'm not just like you. I'm tired of focusing on that 4th and 1 against Pitt, because there's so many other things when you go throughout an entire, football season. And that's literally the very first game,
Yeah, I think it's because it was Pitt. I understand it stings. I get it, but there were so many other things this season that could have changed. If JT hadn't thrown that pick 6 against Kansas in overtime, if Taj Austin hadn't committed that boneheaded penalty against Kansas.
If we don't jump off sides on the 5-yard line.
Yes, I mean there's 1,000
umpteen times.
100 different scenarios that could have played out this year. And even if we make that 4th and 1 against Pitt, it doesn't mean that still doesn't guarantee we win the game.
Absolutely. So, and I mean, it kind of goes back to last year some. I know we're over the Pitt game, but you want to think about the tenure of Neil Brown. How many 50-50 games were we in last year, those what-if scenarios where we ended up losing the game? And, Neil Brown levies it up to there's little room for error in this league, and he says, you could be TCU as easily as you could be WVU right now at this point, just depending on how well you manage those margins. But at the end of the day, to me, you're losing those margins more often than you're winning them, Neil Brown. So
yeah, I agree with you. Every team in the Big 12 can make the same statement. There's little room for error in this league. And I know, but the other teams are handling it, and you're not.
Yeah. It's like, brand new coaches are handling it better than you are at this point. So, like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I think he was just trying to put lipstick on a pig, as they say.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think he's wrong. I think that there is very little room for error. Absolutely. Which is why you got to have a well-disciplined team that can really handle their business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Roger Dodger in the comments here says, would West Virginia fans prefer a loss today? Maybe Neil Brown out. Well, I mean, number one, I'd never prefer a loss in any situation. I'm always wanting the Mountaineers to win. But number two, I also think, just as much as this win maybe didn't, go into him staying or leaving, I don't think losing would have either. I don't think this game really was going to do anything for his fate one way or the other, whichever that may be, which I'm guessing we'll find out, in the coming days.
I agree. I just don't have an enemy to root against them. I can't do it. I can't physically do it.
Yeah, I can't.
I don't care if we were 0-9. I just can't physically root for us to lose a game.
Yeah, I think that it's very important to be supportive of the team, but critical of the coaching staff. It's been my take of it.
And I think you can do both. Doesn't have to be one.
Absolutely.
Yep. Absolutely. It says Lee played lights out. That's definitely somebody that I thought stood out today, maybe more so than, any other time throughout the season. I thought today we saw maybe the Lee Koba that they, tried to talk up throughout the offseason leading into this game. Maybe this is kind of the player they were seeing. I thought he did a lot of good things, was in the backfield a lot today.
I just think it took these guys, these recruits, the transfers that came in. I think it took those guys most of the season to figure it out, for the light to come on, so to speak.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what happened with Charles Woods, and that's why they brought him in, Charles Woods really popped off at the end of the season last year, and, maybe they thought they got him in sooner, they can get him rolling earlier, but just sometimes it just takes time to get up to speed.
But I just that comment's fun.
I know. I thought the same thing.
But I can just imagine it in my head.
Yeah, same here. Joe Schmo says, how did Nico do today processing wise? I don't know. I'd have to go back and watch it and look at that a little bit more to give you a good answer on that personally. Either one of you guys, got an opinion there?
I don't know. I feel like they didn't really set him up for a lot of processing plays. Like I think that it was more of like a 1 read, 2 read. If it's not there, he kind of missed some. There's like some miscommunication on a couple, but I didn't really feel like we threw it enough with Nico to really give him a chance to like run a proper offense, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I thought there was a couple of those bubble screens that he threw that he shouldn't have thrown. They weren't there. So I think in cases he probably didn't have proper processing or make the proper reads. And on one of them, the announcer even made the statement that he had the running back open on the other side, so he should have turned and thrown it to him. But with the exception of those 2 plays, I'm like Bradley. I don't think we had a big enough sample size of pass plays to judge. I do think. I mean, no freshman's going to make. I don't think any true freshman thrown in that situation is going to bat 1,000. So you're going to expect some mistakes. But he may be. I felt honestly, and this is no shot at Garrett Green because he's just a different type of player. But I thought Nico looked more comfortable than Garrett Green does. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe wrong, but that's just the way I viewed it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're kind of to me, you're getting like 2 players from 2 different backgrounds.
Yeah.
Garrett Green's come from a dual threat offense that wasn't as highly touted as what Nico came from. So he's probably just more ready for the moment.
Yeah. And I'm not saying one's better than the other, because like you said, they're 2 different types of players. But
I would love to see them battle it out in the offseason for starting.
Absolutely, me too. And speaking of that, did you guys see JT Daniels sidelines today at all, or did I miss something?
Nope.
No. I didn't see him, and I've seen people talking about him not seeing him. So I don't know. He may have, if he's leaving. I mean, I guess if he's not thinking about coming back to WVU, whether he's hitting the transfer portal or going to the NFL. Why? I guess he's like, why would he come to this final game, especially if they were only planning on playing Garrett Green and Nico? But I don't know. I don't know if he was there or not.
To me, that tells us a lot. If he wasn't there, that tells you he's probably not coming back next year.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I have no issue with that because I think we need to move on from him. He was an experiment that did not work, and we need to move on and look towards the future. That's the way I'll gauge it.
Absolutely. And I even came back once Garrett Green kind of was getting the start, 3 games ago. I kind of called out and said, I haven't seen JT Daniels at all. And I expected to see him, helping out Garrett Green, trying to get him to learn a little bit, trying to be that supportive team player. And the second I didn't see him around those quarterbacks, I started thinking, well, why is that? And my assumption has been that JT Daniels has not cared for about 5 games now. JT Daniels has been clocked out. I mean, just not really putting it out there. Just hasn't really cared for a few games now. And I think this even goes back to when he was starting. And, that may not be the case. It could have been he was hurt. Could have been X, Y, Z, whatever you want to call it. But to me, it was just like he didn't care. I just think that he stopped, caring. That's why he stopped putting balls in good places. And I think that it just was dragging the team down, quite honestly. And, you see a guy come in there and it's Garrett Green. He's got a chance to pick him up, and the team gets excited. And you see what happens, and you just were not getting that with JT. And so him not being around to support the young quarterbacks, especially Nico, who he said he took under his wing in the offseason. Nico gets to come in and start today, and he's coming off the sideline, and it's him and Garrett Green. It's not JT Daniels in there giving him coaching. It's Garrett Green, and they're all working as teammates. And I think that just screams volumes about where that situation is at right now, in my opinion.
Because he at Georgia, you always saw JT Daniels there to meet Stetson Bennett when he came to the field. I mean, even in the championship game and in the playoffs, JT Daniels was always right there with him, and you didn't see that today. So,
haven't seen it since he stopped starting.
No, I seen it the day that they took him out. That game he was there doing it.
See, I don't even recall seeing him that game. I
did a couple times, but since then I haven't. Mm-hmm. But I don't always pay attention to that stuff either, so I don't want to pass judgment. That's why I asked you guys if you've seen him, because I didn't see Goose in either. Some other people said they did. So
yeah, he was definitely on the sideline, but he was not involved in huddles.
Okay. And I think that's also telling because
interesting. I don't know. I think. Well, I was just gonna say, I think that he's just like, from what I've heard, he's kind of just like a different guy, like just a weird guy. Like, I mean, What the person that was telling me kind of like about his personality, the way they use it to describe to me is like he just like not lackadaisical, but he's just even keel no matter what. Same type of personality, doesn't care, like wears pajamas to class and stuff, like is what the person was telling me and stuff like that. Just he's just a different type of guy, and so I think there's nothing wrong with that, but just his personality didn't mesh with this team and wasn't what they needed, especially at the quarterback position. I think that maybe this team, because I think we've seen with Garrett Green taking over and then with Nico, like you said, who seemed more comfortable, both those two guys have that kind of mindset of being the leader and wanting to take over and are more outspoken as well. And I think maybe this team just needed a more of a player like that at the helm. And I wouldn't be surprised if JT Daniels isn't coming back to WVU, which I don't think he is. He may end up, playing one more season in college football, because I don't know if this year did enough to, show the NFL what they wanted to see, unless they were just wanting to see him stay healthy for a season. But I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. He needs to stay. I think he needs to play at least one more year, because I still have my doubts that he was healthy. He never looked the same after the Texas game. When we saw him sitting on the sidelines with that ice on his shoulder, he hasn't looked the same since to me. So.
Yeah. And I mean, and quite honestly, like I just don't. I've been, I feel like Neil Brown's been lacking any it factor on his team for his tenure here. He's not had a single person with it factor, and I think that Nico Markhill and Garrett Green both bring that. I think that they're both overflowing with that it factor, and I just don't think JT has it. And he has all the arm talent in the world, but to me, you can't be an exceptional quarterback without the it factor. You got to have that just straight up dog in you, and I just didn't see it with him. I didn't see it with Jared Dagey either. So, you could have two completely different levels of arm talent, but if you don't got it, outcome's not that much different, brother.
I agree.
Exactly. And that's my 100% thoughts about it too, is because JT Daniels is probably a more talented, player than Garrett Green. But the thing about Garrett Green is, once he came in finally in that game against Oklahoma, he's just the type of player that raises the level of play of the people around him. And that's what you want from quarterback. Not only that, but the team's energy level went up, and even the crowd, in the stadium, the fans' energy level was better with Garrett Green there. And that's just something you can't really quantify talent, and something that he gave you that JT Daniels couldn't.
Yeah, and that's something that you heard Graham Harrell preaching all offseason, all throughout the season. You want a quarterback that's going to make the team around him better.
That's their number one job, in my opinion.
Yep.
It's like a point guard in basketball.
Joey Foster says, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Support this West Virginia channel. Yeah, guys, we're trying to, get the West Virginia channel subscription count up, getting close to that 1,000 we're trying to reach. So, do us a favor, even if you're not a Mountaineer fan, subscribe for a little bit till we get to over that, 1,000 mark. Then you can even unsubscribe if you want to once we get a little bit over 1,000. But we're so close and trying to grow this West Virginia channel here at the Voice of College Football. And there will continue to be content on the channel, throughout the offseason, even though West Virginia is about to enter the offseason, as they won't play in a bowl game. But we've appreciated everyone that's tuned into all of these post-game shows here at the Voice of College Football channel on the West Virginia side. And hit the like button on the video definitely before you head out. That'll really help its performance and help, future video performances here on this channel. And, really helps with, as we try and get more of this Mountaineer sports content out to Mountaineer Nation, whether you're watching live here or if you're watching on the playback. That definitely helps. Run to Reed says Yahoo Sports says some 5 and 7 teams may get bowl bids this year. The bowl in Birmingham has no ties to Big 12, but stranger things have happened. It will be 2-hour drive. I don't think West Virginia would, because from what I remember with that 5 and 7, like the 5 and 7 teams that do get them, it's like goes by academics based, I think. And West Virginia is not, up in the top tier of those that would be chosen. If I'm.
Yeah, I heard the same thing.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Hey guys.
Hey,
Howdy.
What's going on?
Foster popping in here. Oh, no.
So I was talking to the chat earlier.
Close out the season on a win here.
Yeah, I'm glad to see it. I was saying in the chat there, somebody was talking about, can Neil Brown get us to 8 or 9 wins if he has the right coaching staff behind him? And I made the comment, I think he can, but the problem is the university's got to come off some money. Because $3.5 million for an entire coaching staff is not a lot of money these days. That's nothing. And so they're going to have to give him, $5 million to be able to go out and hire the coordinators we need. I think if they'll give him the money, I think he'll fire Jordan Leslie and Matt Moore his buddies, and actually get some good people. I don't know if he'll fire them. He'll reassign them, or whatever. But I think that would, if they would just come off a little bit of money, they've got to do that.
Yeah, that actually, somebody made a comment earlier, Joey, and I was going to ask you guys. I see using the excuse that they won't fire Neil Brown because they can't afford it. I don't know if I buy that, because if they couldn't afford it, would they have ever made signed that extension in the first place?
Yeah, but the guy that signed it got fired.
I agree, but I get that. But I mean, sure to God, he knows what their books look like. I mean, he's not stupid.
He got fired for more reasons. Yeah, he got fired for a lot more reasons than football. Believe me, because I mean, every program was down last year. We were horrible. We were at the bottom of the Big 12 in every sport. We were horrible in every sport. So, this year, at least we do have a couple of good sports. But yeah, that's why Shane Lyons was fired, not necessarily anything else, not for that extension necessarily.
I think it was part of it, but I think Shane too was just not. I think he was too old school and too. He wouldn't think outside the box when it came to raising money and gaining revenue.
Right.
He didn't embrace NIL the way he should have. Things like that. I mean, to me, Did you guys catch this? Country Roads Trust did an interview the other day. Rob Alsop, the interim AD, and to my recollection, I could be wrong, and correct me if I am. I don't recall Shane Lyons ever doing any interviews with Country Roads Trust at all. Matter of fact, I don't think I ever remember him even talking about Country Roads Trust. It's almost like he wanted to distance himself from it. And
I hadn't caught that, but that's a pretty good point.
Yeah, and to me, that's and Dale Wolfley even quoted it, quote tweeted it out and said, "This is the start of the athletic department finally embracing Country Roads Trust." So that makes me think that maybe, and I know Dale Wolfley's part of Country Roads Trust, so he's probably got some bias there, but at the same time, it also tells us maybe that's part of the reason that Shane's not here anymore. Maybe he wasn't embracing NIL and doing what, because there are certain things the university can do. I mean, there's obviously things they can't do, but there's also things they can do with NIL, and I don't know that they were doing it.
Yeah. Well, I think so. I'd agree with you.
Yeah.
I don't think they were doing it. And I think that a big part of it is because Shane Lyons, he also works closely with the NCAA. So I think while you can do it, it's almost like doing it, through a loophole and stuff, because there's not really rules, there's not necessarily guidelines. And I think Shane Lyons was probably against that and wanted to do everything exactly, to the rule book, to the T, due to his relationship with the NCAA. And, that probably played a part, and it was hurting West Virginia's NIL maybe.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I just wanted to come in and I wanted to come in real quick and say this. When I approached you guys and asked you if you do the post game show for West Virginia on Mark Rogers' channel, I didn't know it would be such a horrible season, and stuff. And you guys have stormed through this season. You guys have done a great job being here every week, and I wanted to come in and personally thank you and say, you've done a great job and just say thank you for doing that and stuff. And appreciate you.
I appreciate you a lot, Joey. That means a lot, And yeah, I was about to say, despite it being a down season, these have definitely been fun, each and every week, I think. And we've always, looked forward to them. And, just even though we're losing, we're still looking forward to, when they were bad results, these were still fun in spite of that, kind of were the uplifting source. And then, of course, therapeutic with getting to vent a little bit with everyone in the live chat and stuff. And that's always the best part of it, I think.
Yeah, and everybody in the chat, if you agree with me, I think they've done a great job. We owe them a big thank you for being here for us and to wrap up these games for us. And I know it's been a rough year. So, but that's all I wanted to say, guys. And I will get out of here and let you guys finish your show up. And y'all have a great day. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Joey. Thank you for everything you do too, brother.
Thank you, Joey. Yeah. Anyway, got a question in the chat here I thought was interesting. This is definitely a topic of, conversation, of course, was the hit on Garrett Green from John Bowyer here. Appreciate you chiming in. He asked if we thought it was targeting. In my opinion, it did. We've seen similar hits this season result in that. And, especially when you look at the guy and he is, concussed, knocked out of the game and, essentially the season, ended his season there. I don't see how it wasn't personally, but what were your guys' thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was probably targeting, but at the same time, I was kind of glad to see the pick the flag up because I don't think the guy did it intentionally. I think it was just a bang bang play, and that's football. And I think in this case, even though by the letter of the law it probably was targeting, I don't think it should have been called on that play because of the nature. Because he was ducking his head at the same time, and it just kind of happened. So to me, they did the right thing by reviewing it and not throwing a flag. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, to me, it was more of that one right there specifically. I think is probably a penalty, but for me, it feels like there should be levels to it, which is not the question. But to me, there should be levels to it. It almost to me feels like a face mask. Like you don't intentionally face mask somebody, right? Like you don't mean to reach out. Sometimes you do, but you don't mean to reach out and grab somebody's face mask. It just happens, but it's still a penalty, right? And so it's like one of those things where it's like, you drop your head, you get some crown to the helmet contact. It's a penalty. Take the 15. I don't think that player should have been ejected from the game because he was just making a play. I mean, he went to go make a tackle. Garrett Green dropped his helmet. I don't think there's anything, malicious about that. So I don't think the kid should lose the rest of his game or maybe even half of another game, depending on when it happens because of it. But to me, I think it should be a penalty. That right there should not be happening in the game. We should discourage it. But, I don't think that guy, had it been called a targeting, I wouldn't have wanted him ejected from the game because it wasn't malicious. It was incidental. Should still be a penalty. Should still be, gone against. But, yeah, so I was fine with him picking it up, but because I didn't want to see a player leave for, something he didn't mean to do. But to me, it should still be a penalty.
That makes sense. I can go along with
it. But that's actually going to be it for me, fellas. I got to roll.
Definitely a bang issue with the targeting has been since they've. No, go ahead, Brad. Good to see you, man. Glad you pop in for a minute. But I was just saying my issue is just the consistency. It's hard to have consistency on those targeting calls for sure. That's the way they officiate it anyway. No consistency in it.
Yeah, so it's gonna be looked at. But before I peace out, guys, like Joe was saying, really appreciate you all hanging with us for this season. I know it's been rough, but we've had a fun time jumping on here and talking about it in the post game. So it's been a blast, guys. It doesn't really feel like it's the end of the year, but end of the season, but it is. We still got a lot of excitement to come forward, and all of us here in the Mountaineer social media realm and podcasting realm are definitely going to cover it thoroughly. I promise you that. Between us, Coos, Golden Blue Dude, Letter with Kenny, and Paul the Mountaineer, all of us, we got you guys covered. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I'll catch all you guys next time. You two keep killing it.
Appreciate you, Brad. All right, I had a comment pulled up here, then I'll let it scroll down. Where is it? Here it is. Browns and Beers. I appreciate you chiming in. He says, "How did Neil not see that all season and for 2 seasons with Green?" What do you think about people that have said that Garrett Green's performance in these past few games go to show that he should have been playing maybe all along? Do you agree with that, or do you think they waited till he was ready? What do you think?
I think they waited until he was ready. I mean, and I'll be honest, I still don't think we've seen enough to be. I still don't think we've seen enough to be convinced he's the guy for the starting job. I mean, he only played 1 full game as a starter, and I mean, he didn't play great. He played good enough to win, but he didn't. I mean, he threw 2 picks. Both of them were probably his fault. He still doesn't make all of his reads like he's supposed to. He has a cannon for an arm. He has the physical tools. I just don't know that he, I guess what I'm getting at is I don't think he was ready yet. And I still don't know if he's completely ready, but I don't think they had a choice because he was, they needed that. He provided something they needed, which was that energy and that spark.
No, I 100% agree with you. I think, they waited till it was ready as long as they could anyway. Like you said, they still, maybe even waited longer if they had a choice. But, whatever was going on with JT, like you said, he wasn't the same after that one point in the season. They had to make a change one way or the other. Felt like he was the best option at the time. But I'm with you. I think the verdict's still out on that. I think we're going to have a quarterback competition depending on, what happens with the staff and who sticks around. I think, Markio and Green would be a great quarterback competition, and perhaps Goose. We'll see, what happens there even. But Green, I like what he gives you, but, like Neil Brown even called it, I think the Garrett Green experience, because, within a handful of plays, you can have one of the best plays you've seen and then one of the worst plays you've seen. Like the 36-yard touchdown run, that was, a play I hadn't seen something like that in a few years, it felt like. And then that slant pass he throws high and throws an interception, a few series later. So you get a little bit of both with him. It's hard. I think Nico, like you said, seemed more comfortable and even more consistent, I thought.
Yeah, and a coach like Neil Brown, who's so detail oriented, stuff like that probably drives him off the wall. It probably makes him lose sleep at night because he wants everything done exactly like it's drawn up.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Blake Green, you say the 3 options for next year: Rich Rod, Gibby, or Neil Brown. No, I don't know if I'd say that exactly, but I don't know if Rich Rod and Gibby would potentially be options if Neil Brown isn't an option. Would probably be a better way of putting it, I guess. But I don't know. Out of the 3, I'd say Neil Brown's probably the most likely.
I agree with that. My gut tells me, now I could be wrong, and I don't have anybody telling me this. It's just my gut based on reading the tea leaves. I think Neil Brown's coming back.
Yep. Yeah, 100%, man. I don't know. I started, feeling like that. I was thinking about it today before the game and just started for absolutely no reason at all other than just, like you said, just trying to see how I felt about it myself by just judging it in my personal feeling of what I think is going to happen. And I'm like, all signs do kind of point to maybe one more year, it feels like. And I didn't know if this game played a part, but I knew, winning it couldn't hurt, especially if he was playing these young players. So I don't know if that plays a part or not, but right now, like I said, it's a situation certainly can change, on a dime. I think, depending on who West Virginia hires as athletic director could, play a part in it, which I think we'll know about that soon. But I'm with you. I think right now I'd lean to him probably being back next season more than I would to us firing him right now. And I wouldn't have said that, a week ago. Just seems like it's going that way.
Yeah. And I've kind of started, like I said earlier, I've basically started to accept it, and I'm going to start looking ahead as if that's the case. My fear is the fan base is so far gone on him right now. I don't know that you'll get him back, barring him going out and winning 2 or 3 in a row next year to start the season. Now, if we can open the season with a win over Penn State at Penn State, that would be huge, obviously. But barring something like that happening, I just don't know. I just don't think the fan base is going. I think the whole offseason, the fan base is going to be disgruntled and mad and upset.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably going to lose season ticket sales over it, things like that. So might have lower turnout at the coaches caravan events where they, which are big fundraisers for them. One of their biggest fundraisers they do. And to me, that's a huge risk to take, man. And I think they would know by now. I've seen some people even say that maybe they're just leaking that information out there to get the pulse of the fan base to see what they think. I don't think they.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say they don't care, because obviously they do, because they know it's money, but they're not going to use the fan base's opinion to make decisions.
Yeah.
Until it does.
That's 100% true.
It does start making a financial impact, then they'll make the decision. That's my take on it anyway.
No, and I 100%, that's what I worry about with it. If they do choose to, go with Neil Brown for next year, is I do worry about season ticket sales and stuff, because, that last game that we played against Kansas State, I think it was, Kansas State was after Oklahoma, but the announced attendance was like 37,000. And I don't know about you, but personally, I can't remember them ever announcing an attendance below like 40K. And so, if they announce him to come back, I do think season ticket sales might take a hit. So I'm a little bit worried about that and how they're going to sell the fan base again next season. They're going to definitely have to do some things to sell the fan base if they choose to keep Neil Brown for sure, or they're going to have to deal with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's see. I had a question here pulled up. I always let it scroll down one time. Here it is. It was more of a comment, but Bo Stacker says our defense has gotten somewhat better since the Oklahoma game. Yeah, see, that's what I'm also torn about, because we talked a little bit earlier about somebody having to be the scapegoat. Maybe it's Jordan Leslie, maybe it's somebody on that staff. But this defense was hit with injuries, hard throughout the season, even starting early with Charles Woods, who was maybe, potentially supposed to be one of the better players on the defense. But I think their best football was, some of these, maybe 3 out of these last 4 games. I think, against Iowa State, the offense couldn't do anything, but the defense played good. The defense got the stops they needed to against TCU, despite, late not being able to. Oklahoma, they did what they needed to in this game, coming up with the stops there at the end. So I think they found ways with these injuries and playing some players that they weren't expecting to play, like we talked about earlier with the former walk-on and Malachi Ruffin. So I'm a little bit torn on, getting rid of Jordan Leslie if Neil Brown comes back. But I think if Neil Brown comes back, we're going to. So I don't know. I'm torn on that even.
Yeah, I am too, man. Because you look back, Jordan Leslie's fielded some good defenses here. But if you look back at 2019 or 2020, rather, when our defense was, I think, top 5 in the country. I think it was 2020. It was either 2019 or 2020. We were we had like a top 5 defense in the country that year. And but that was the year that Jamal Adai was the co-defensive coordinator. And since he's been gone, defense has gradually gotten a little bit worse every year. Now, we've still been good enough to win. Last year our defense was good. It wasn't great. It was like 40th or 50th in the country. But it was good enough to win, and our offense stunk it up. And this year our defense was terrible, and our offense was not great, but good enough to win, right? So it's kind of flip-flopped on us. So to me, it's almost, I hate to say it because we're 3 years into his tenure as DC, but it's almost too early to tell. Because I can't tell if it was it Alonzo Adai that had that, or I keep saying Alonzo, Jamal Adai that had that defense playing so good? Was it him? Was it it was it had to be 2020 because Vic Canning was here in 2019. So
2020.
Yeah, it was the 2020 season. But I don't know, man. It just I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it because I don't like to fire a guy for one bad year. You know what I'm saying? When he's had multiple good years, but at the same time, if you bring Neil Brown back and the entire staff back, it's almost like you're saying you're okay with what just happened, and I don't think you can do that. So I don't know. I'm glad I'm not the one making the decisions. Is all I can tell you because it would be tough.
That's a great way of putting it because to me, the way I look at it personally, just with all the caveats that go into bringing Neil Brown back, that you're going to have to do. Jump through hoops to get the fan base brought in and all that. I think it would just be, so much easier just to cut ties and start all over because what we're dealing with now is the fan base is divided already. The one thing when you hired Neil Brown was you had the fan base, united for what felt like the first time in a while. And now it's divided again. I think if you bring Neil Brown back, you're not going to be able to overcome that. It's going to be very hard to anyway. At least if you bring in somebody new, the fan base would all be, behind that, I think, in my opinion. But I don't know if that's the way they're going to go. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. Like you said, I'm glad I'm not the one making the choice because there's definitely a lot of pros and cons to either way you want to look at it, firing him or keeping him.
Yeah. And let me ask your opinion on this, Jordan. I'm of the opinion that they should try to keep at least one or two, even if they let Neil go. They should try to keep at least one or two coaches from his staff on that will help retain some of the talent that they have. Like just when Neyland retired back in 2000, 2001, whenever it was, they kept Bill Stewart on the staff to help the players integrate over to Rich Rod, right? So who do you keep on that staff? I've said that you keep Chad Scott on if you can.
Got to be Chad Scott.
At least Chad Scott, and maybe even Graham Harrell, depending on who the head coach ends up being. If you bring in an air raid guy, do you keep Graham on as your OC? Or if you bring a defensive-minded guy, does he keep Graham on as the OC? Whatever. But there again, I think the verdict's still out on him too. I don't think he deserves to be fired necessarily. But if you clean house and clean everybody out, then maybe obviously that's it. But do you think Chad Scott is the guy that number one? Do you think it would be a good idea to try to keep one coach from the staff? And two, do you think Chad Scott is a guy you would want to keep?
I think that it's not a bad idea, definitely, especially when it comes to a place like WVU. If you're bringing in a guy, that doesn't really have ties to West Virginia in any way, because I think, West Virginia is, a specific type of place with a specific type of culture and, You just need somebody that knows West Virginia, really, in my opinion. So, even if it's not somebody that has ties to West Virginia, like a Chad Scott, but somebody that's been here, for 4 years and has gotten to know it. And I think Chad Scott, it's hard to argue that he's produced more than any other position coach on the staff. So to me, that would probably definitely be my number one. And I think if I was picking an offensive and a defensive guy, I think I like Dante Wright on defense. I would pick, Chad Scott and Dante Wright is my two. I think Dante Wright's been a pretty good coach as well.
Now, does he coach safeties or corners? I can't remember.
I think he's safeties. I think he was linebackers at one point, but I think he's safeties now. Safeties, okay. And I think he does some of the special teams as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I would have no issue with that because Aubrey Burks has played well this year. We've seen some of these guys come on really strong at the safety position. Davis Mounder, they said, he showed some flashes before his injury. So yeah, I wouldn't have an issue with that. But yeah, you can't just not do anything. Not doing anything is, to me, not an option. And to me, it's easier just to clean the house, man, and say, hey, let everybody go.
Absolutely,
but then
I agree.
And of course, then you risk losing half of your team, and half of your recruiting class. But you can't. But I've been telling people, you cannot be willing to give up the future of the program for one recruiting class. It's a long-term decision, not a short-term decision. So if that's the way they're going to go, they have to make it, and they can't let one recruiting class be a deciding factor. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. No, I agree 100% because I think you can make that argument either way. You can lose guys, but you can also look when Dana left, we thought we would lose a lot of recruits, and Neil Brown was able to keep pretty much all that recruiting class intact. I think he might have lost one or two guys at most, but so you never know. It could go either way. But, a question that I had, for you, Coos, is after West Virginia closes out this season with a win to get their 5th win of the season, first Big 12 road win of the season, Neil Brown's second, Big 12 road win since 2019, first one since Kansas last year. West Virginia finishing the year at 5-7, 3-6 after the 24-19 win over Oklahoma State. First time beating Oklahoma and Oklahoma State in the same season. We mentioned that a little bit earlier, but I appreciate you guys tuning in the chat as well. Continue to drop your thoughts and questions, comments. Get to a few more of those before we get out here. But West Virginia, when we looked at them today, they only passed the ball for 77 yards, Coos. And so I think if West Virginia, if Neil Brown does come back, like we've talked about, maybe being a possibility, the offensive staff may not change too much. If anything, we're talking about maybe changes on the defensive staff, in our opinion. So with this offense coming back and a lot of the players you used today, potentially coming back, whether it be Jalen Anderson, Nico, Garrett Green, etc., do you think that that's kind of the way this West Virginia offense will go, even if Graham Harrell stays here? Is more of a predominant run offense, that only needs 100 to 150 passing yards a game and can run for 200 yards a game? Maybe likening back to some successful West Virginia offenses in the past, whether it be the Pat White era, Rasheed Marshall, Major Harris, Skylar Howard, you can name it. That seems to be a formula for success at WVU, in my opinion. So do you think this coaching staff would go that way, and this is kind of a preview of the way that offense might look?
I think so. For the reason I think that's what they've shown on film the last few games, and two, who are we going to have at the wide receiver position? We're losing we're losing two of our three most productive receivers. Bryce Ford Wheaton and Sam James are both gone. They both have a year of eligibility left, but I don't think they'll use it. They both walked on senior day. They both made comments alluding to the fact this is their last year. I think they're out. And Caden Prather's a guy that there's rumors that he may leave. And I think Neil Brown included in his press conference the other day that there's a few guys on the roster they're going to have to make a point to try to keep. I think he's one of them. So, especially if he leaves, my gosh, you have no returning production hardly back at that position. You have to be a running team because you're not going to have anybody to throw the ball to. And no offense to the guys we got, but they've just not shown that they're going to be big-time receivers. Now, they might get somebody out of the portal or whatnot, but I just don't know who you throw the ball to next. I'm really concerned about our wide receiver room next year. I'm not going to lie. That's probably my biggest concern on the offensive side of the ball anyway, is who are we? Our running back room, assuming these guys stay, obviously, is going to look really good next year. But I don't know who we're going to throw it to.
Loaded.
Yeah, if we can keep KP, then obviously he's your go-to guy. But if you lose him, you've got Braham, you've got Aaron, and you've got Reese Smith, who's not really done a lot yet. I mean, he's shown flashes, but you know, 1 or 2 catches a game is not really a go-to guy, you know. And then
Right.
Freshman Jarrell Williams, who's not even played to my knowledge this year. I haven't seen him on the field. Maybe in the
I
Towson.
don't think he's played. Yeah, maybe Towson, but that's it. Well, and then beyond, like you said, beyond the guys that you mentioned, then you would talk about relying on Preston Fox, who we think has potential, but it'd be Preston Fox and Malashevich, and both of those guys are former walk-ons. And nothing against former walk-ons, not saying they can't be successful because of that, but you just don't have many scholarship receivers. You're going to have to hit the portal or something, I think.
Have to. I think you have to. This coaching staff has, if they stay, they have got to do a better job on the transfer portal. That has been, to me, their downfall. They're losing too many productive guys, and they're not. And the guys they replaced them with are not meeting that level of production. And in a lot of cases, they went and lost production. And you can't do that. West Virginia cannot. We're not a program that can afford to lose guys and then, you know, not replace them. I mean, because we're not going to. You know, we don't have 4 and 5 star caliber guys in most positions. We've got to develop guys, and it takes 2 to 3 years to develop them. So we can't rely on freshmen. We're not a program that can rely on freshmen to win games. So I just, they've got to do it. I think they've got to take the Bob Huggins approach, man, and go out and do everything. But in order to do that, they've probably got to get more NIL money. That goes back to the discussion about Shane Lyons. They've got to be able to give these guys reasons to stay. And NIL's, unfortunately, in the era we're in, is going to be a big reason.
Yep. Review, it's big right now. You know, like you said, West Virginia traditionally has been a developmental program. That's, you know, how Neyland built it and, you know, everyone else. And, you know, it's just hard to do that in today's game. So West Virginia might have to do it a different way. Like you're saying, you know, hit the transfer portal and be better at that more so than, you know, still developing the guys that you can hang on to, but you're not going to be able to do it like you used to and hang on to all of them. So in turn with that, you got to be better at NIL to be better at the transfer portal. And that's definitely the way West Virginia has to go. And their new athletic director is going to play a part in that. To go along with that, Mountaineer asks in the comments, any news on the athletic director search? Coos, I know information wise, me and you usually, you know, pretty much have the same, you know, intel going on, but, you know, what are you getting on your end as far as that athletic director search is concerned? Like I said, I'm kind of expecting something in the next 24 to 48 hours, but, you know, what about you?
Same thing, but I'm not hearing, I mean, nothing different. I've heard that, you know, the Chun guy from Washington State's a candidate. I've heard that obviously Rob Mullins is a big candidate, but I've heard crickets as far as their chances of landing either one of those guys. And then, you know, I've had some people tell me Kelly Zinn is a candidate. I've had some tell me she's not. I don't know. So to be honest, I'm clueless. I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, Jordan and I'll probably know the same time you guys do, to be honest.
Yeah, I was about to say, you know, we'll update it as it goes along. Of course, you know, Coos over on his channel, us over on the Country Roads webcast. And of course, we share things here on the West Virginia channel with the Voice of College Football. So always subscribe and know more as it goes along. But yeah, as far as names are concerned, it's, you know, it's also up right now. But the big names that you're hearing, of course, the same ones we've talked about, you know, Patrick Chun and Rob Mullins. And then, of course, Kelly Zinn is, you know, coming up. Some people debunking that, some people saying, you know, she's higher on the list. So I don't know, you know, those are kind of the 3 names you're hearing right now, but who knows? It's definitely a situation that's in flux and can change any moment. But if you hear something in the next, you know, 24 to 48 hours, maybe it's probably going to be one of those 3 would be my guess. I don't know though. We'll see how it progresses moving forward. But, you know, we'll get ready to get out here for too much longer. But, you know, before we do, wanted to say, you know, thank you to Mark Rogers and thank you to everybody, you know, that tunes in here at the Voice of College Football channel. It's been a lot of fun doing these post-game shows throughout the season. You know, just want to remind you guys one more time, hit the like button on this video. It really helps its performance here on the channel. And subscribe to the West Virginia channel here at the Voice of College Football Network. We're trying to get it up to the 1,000 subscriber count. But really appreciative to all you guys that have tuned in throughout the season. Appreciative to Mark Rogers, Joey, Coos, Mountaineer Paul, Brad, Steven, everybody, you know, Golden Blue dude that's been featured here, you know, throughout the season. It's been, you know, a fun season despite West Virginia finishing with a losing season. At least they go out on a high note here with the 24-19 victory. But that being said, before we get ready to wrap this one up, Coos, appreciate you hopping on here with us, you know, at the end to celebrate a West Virginia win finally. But want to give you a chance, you know, to plug anything you wanted to, something you had coming up or anything you want to plug, you know, your channel wise here at the end before we close it out, of course.
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube at Coos's Corner. obviously I do West Virginia football, try to cover as much as I can of the Big 12 as well. And then Mountaineer Paul and I, who you mentioned earlier, have teamed up together to start a basketball channel called Hoops from the Hills, where we focus on West Virginia and Big 12 basketball. We're kind of wanted to find a separate channel to put our basketball content on. So he and I are teaming up on that. So come and check that channel out, please. It's brand new, so we need, we're still trying to get our subscriber count up. So come subscribe to that channel, please. But and then if you want to interact with me on Twitter, I'm at Coos206 over on Twitter. If you want to check me out and hit me up on over there as well.
Right on. Appreciate you, Coos, as always. And it's definitely great West Virginia content, great Big 12 content over on Coos' channel. And I have been following along as they created that Hoops from the Hills channel. And if you're a WVU basketball fan, it's definitely something you'll want to follow along. So do that for sure. Hoops from the Hills on YouTube and Coos' Corner on YouTube as well. As far as me, I'm with the Country Roads webcast, where you can find us on YouTube. I know the Mountaineer football season is ending, but like Coos and Mountaineer Paul over at Hoops from the Hills, we're going to be covering WVU basketball a little bit as well. So you get a little bit content there, and then of course there'll be all kinds of West Virginia football news coming throughout the off season. We'll be dropping that over on the Country Roads webcast. We also have a podcast version, long form episodes we release on the audio side. You can find on any podcast platform there. Just search Country Roads webcast. So subscribe to us on YouTube, subscribe to us on the audio side. And then, of course, if you haven't already, subscribe to the West Virginia channel here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciative of you guys that tune in here every week. As far as Mountaineers, it's a wrap of 2022 season. They finish it at 7 overall, 3-6 in conference, across the bottom there. And the final game is a victory, though, over the Oklahoma State Cowboys, 24-19. So despite a losing season, definitely some positives throughout. Beating Oklahoma for the first time, beating Oklahoma State for the first time in several years, and giving them their first home loss in 14 games. I believe they're on a 14-game winning streak. So some positives for the Mountaineers to finish out the year, and that's good to leave a good taste in our mouth as we have a tumultuous offseason. Definitely an interesting couple of weeks as the Mountaineers look for an athletic director and any other news that may come along. But Coos, any final thoughts before we jump up out of here, man?
That's it for me, man. I appreciate you having me on, Jordan.
Anytime, man. Anytime. Appreciate you, Coos, and appreciate everyone that tuned in here on the Voice of College Football channel. Like I said, appreciate Mark Rogers for a great season. Joey, Mountaineer Paul, Coos, Golden Blue Dude, Brad, Steven. I could go on listing, but every week's here at the West Virginia channel. It's great if you're a Mountaineer football fan. Come over, subscribe. Plenty of content coming, even though the football season is over. That just means the off season begins. So that being said, until next time, let's go Mountaineers.